Hi, everyone. This is Annette Wittenberger, the host for Parents for Good podcast. And today we are having another heartfelt episode of a very important topic that's very difficult to talk about. Um, it's going to be centered around suicide prevention and mental health. It holds a significant place in all of our hearts, especially as we observe this month as National Suicide Awareness Month. And first, today, I am honored to have a licensed marriage and family therapist with us who will actually shed light on the professional avenues through which individuals and families can seek support and understanding around this topic. Alongside, we also have two incredible college students who are tirelessly championing for change amongst teens. They share their powerful stories and insights that will aim to break the silence surrounding this profound topic. Before we delve deeper, a trigger warning. This episode does contain in depth discussions about suicide, anxiety, and mental health challenges. Some content may be distressing for certain listeners. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out to a trusted individual or professional for support. Your well being matters, and remember, you are never alone in this journey. This purpose of today's conversation is not only to raise awareness, but also to ignite a spark of empathy, understanding, and collective support. So let's come together, tune in, learn, and be a part of this essential dialogue that aims to shed light on the silent struggles and the paths of resilience. So let's get started and introduce our three guests today. Our first is Samantha. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's also based in Hawaii. She maintains a private practice where she provides support to individuals, couples, and families, addressing a range of concerns, including relational distress, anxiety, depression, and trauma. But prior to her private practice, she dedicated 4 years to the Hawaii public school system as a behavioral health specialist. Beyond this, she finds rejuvenation in the waters of Hawaii and cherishes quality time spent with friends and family. She's also a proud mother of an energetic and curious 7-year-old boy. Our next is Megan Sanford. She is a market intern with Digital for Good and I Can Help, and also a UT Austin student. She is in her second year of psychology as a major, and she's also been passionate about mental health advocacy. She has worked with Texas Association of Student Council Digital for Good and UT Student Government for Mental Health. She aspires to be a therapist and continues to destigmatize conversations about mental health. And our next guest, Andrew. She is actually a Digital for Good and I Can Help recruiting intern. He is passionate about youth mental health and is an activist seeking to facilitate conversations that break down barriers of societal stigma. He loves all things wellness, fitness, music, and more. Hi, everyone.
Hello.
So glad you could be here. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you for having us.
So, of course, absolutely. We are honored to have you guys here to talk about such a difficult conversation. But before we get started, let's just get into it. I would love for you to share one word about how you are feeling about today's conversation.
I'm going to go with
I'll go
hopeful.
first. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hopeful. I love that. I love that. No, no, no. I love that. Hopeful is that's a great word. What about you, Morgan?
I think I would say I feel ready.
Sam, I had the same word as
Sorry.
you, but I'm hopeful, and a different word. I'm optimistic. It's going to be a great conversation.
Those are great words. My word is emotional. This is a very emotional topic for me, and but I love that it's hopeful and ready, because you're right. It's time, and we do need to continue this conversation to help end the stigma on it. So we also, before we get into the rest of the rest of this conversation today, we do have a video that we're going to play to help guide today's show from Christy Jarvis. She is sharing her story about her son Chase, and we are so grateful for her willingness to be a part of this episode. We will break this video up in 3 parts. Caitlin, roll the slide.
Hi, my name is Christy Jarvis, and I'm here to share my son's story. My son Chase was 14 years old when he died by suicide, and this was exactly 7 months ago today. And it's still really hard to talk about, but I feel so strongly about helping another family and making my son's life have purpose. So I wanted to share his story. So I'll start from the beginning. I'll start from just quickly as Chase as a child. Chase as a child was just a good kid. He was so easy. He was so happy. He was so joyful. He was always a good student, always so respectful to teachers, so respectful to me. He would open my car door. He just had the best manners, the most caring little boy with the biggest heart. I believe that his depression started around the pandemic. So when our kids were being isolated from their friends, that's kind of where I started to see the change in his behavior. That's also about the time where he started to go through, puberty and his hormones. So I thought that the changes that I was seeing in him, he was quick to anger. He was just not the happy-go-lucky kid. If you had asked me 10 years ago about my son Chase, I would have described him as a happy-go-lucky kid, because that's who he was. But as he started to go through the pandemic, hormones, he was just angry, quick to anger. But he was still that sweet and sensitive kid, that no matter where we were, he would give me a hug. We could be in Target, we could be in front of his friends. He would just give me a hug and say, "I love you, Mom." He was so affectionate and so loving, even through his suffering.
Want to begin a question for Samantha? Let's talk about the stigma around talking about suicide and the fear that talking about it will increase the likelihood of attempts. What is your take on that?
Yeah. I guess first I need to take a breath, because, I think that was,
Yes.
emotional. And I guess I want to start by just thanking, Christy, for sharing that and that story. And, I've worked with or around, mental health for a while now, talked with many high school students about suicide. And I guess one of the things is you never get comfortable with it. Like, it doesn't sit in a way that's like, yeah, that's something I'm, excited to talk about. However, it is something that I want to talk about and I need to talk about. And when I think about that stigma around it, I think of all the different pieces of my life where that stigma is present, from when I was in high school. You don't really talk about it, or, you think that if it's going on for you, that, or at least in my experience, that is there something wrong with me in this moment? And I can't say anything because then people are going to think that there's something messed up with me. And when I think about it, now as a mental health professional, I'm both saddened for that view that I had as a teen, and hopeful that I can help push that conversation so that, one, people will understand that, while we hope that these feelings don't sit, it's okay to have them. And when I say it's okay to have them, I mean you're feeling whatever you're feeling, and you have this pain that's going on for you. And the thought that, what's wrong is a place to start being curious. And when I say curious, I mean, what is happening for me? Why am I, like, what is going on that's bringing up these feelings? What can I do about this? Who do I feel comfortable talking to about this? Who's out there? What's out there? Am I the only one? All of these questions that come up are perfectly normal and are something that it's okay to talk about, and that we want to allow people to be able to talk about. Because the thing is that comes up back to the specific topic of the stigma around is, there's this fear that comes from, if I ask somebody if they're feeling bad, or if they're, having thoughts of suicide, then, and they weren't feeling that before, now they are going to be feeling it. And in my experience, what it is because I asked that question, it's now saying, okay, this person is saying it's okay to talk about it. And I can tell somebody and not be alone in this feeling. Somebody understands it. And oftentimes when people are able to talk about it when they are feeling it, again, it gives them this opportunity. And more often than not, actually, when somebody talks about it, it's a point of, I'm talking about it because I'm looking for help. So when we offer these opportunities and give people this space to talk about it, it gives them the opportunity to answer a question that nobody maybe has asked them before, and start to think about being able to answer it honestly. And I know it's scary, and I know it's hard, and you may have all the feels, and that's okay.
Thank you for sharing that. As you were sharing your story when you were younger, and I go back to grade school, where my first encounter with even surrounding the suicide was, I had one of my best friends. Her mom was struggling, and none of us really understood what she was going through, because mental health wasn't a thing that you talked about. She ended up taking her life, and taking that of my best friend. And as eighth graders, you don't understand that. You're just devastated. Like, what happened? All we knew is that Emily's mom killed her, and then killed herself. And that was all we understood. And then you go to the funeral, and then you're just surrounded by what has happened. And then we go off in our separate ways, and we don't know how to grieve, because that's just to happen in your small town. That was a big deal, like, oh my gosh. And it just carried with us. Even those of us that are still remain connected from eighth grade to this day, is still something that we don't know how to talk about, because it's so traumatic for us. So yeah, I'm want to say I'm glad that we are having that discussion now, but God, it's heartbreaking. But we have to, because we can't let what happened when I was in eighth grade happen now. So anyway, I could talk about this all day. I appreciate what you share and what you do, because we need that. Oh, all right.
And thank
Morgan,
you for sharing that.
on campus. It's deep, right? It's hard, but thank you. I don't talk about that a lot. Morgan, on campus, do you feel this is true amongst your peers? And how have been some ways that you've been able to talk about such a sensitive subject?
Something I've noticed amongst the people I know on campus and I see on social media, it's just people are able to have these conversations now about mental health, but I think there's now a level of humor that is added to it to kind of cope with the fact that this is hard. It is hard to talk about this. And this is all. And yes, I am a firm believer, and we do have to laugh in some of these situations, but I do think that's a double-edged sword. And now people aren't taking it as seriously as they should. And our generation, they laugh, and if they do have a bad test or something, they go immediately to giggling about, oh, my mental health is bad. And it's just, I think that is now an issue that we're facing with talking about these sensitive subjects, of not taking it as seriously, because everyone wants to be humorous about it. And anytime someone is trying to actively have a genuine conversation about their mental health, it's met with just jokes or things that people can giggle about. And that's where I feel like we are at this time with my peers.
So how are some ways that you're able to talk about it when you're in that situation? Do you still feel like there's a space for you?
Mm-hmm. I used to also be that way. Then I realized if I joke about it, I'm not going to take my own self seriously, and I'm not going to respect my own issues, and I'm just going to see it as a joke. So I've gotten more of the mindset of, if someone does come up to me and, like, my friends or whatever, have a conversation and they start to make jokes, I then in turn have started to talk about my own experiences in a serious way, so then they feel comfortable to have a serious conversation about it too. So it's just, that space is there to be like, just to respect your feelings and your own mental health and where you are mentally.
That's thank you for sharing that. And we do that as adults too. I don't know. I do that too. Sometimes I use humor. Humor just helps to not make something so serious.
Mm-hmm.
But like you said before, it could be a double-edged sword, because then when do you take it seriously if we're going to continue
Mm-hmm.
to joke about it? It's such a touchy line. But I think, like with what you're doing, I think it's really great, because then you are giving that space to someone else by sharing your own personal experience. So I commend you for doing that, because not it's a work in progress for decades, right? But you are there now to say, hey, I'm gonna tell you my story. And then they're like, oh, okay, I can talk to
Mm-hmm.
her. So thank you for creating that
Yeah.
space.
Mm-hmm. I try.
Andrew. Oh no, and I know you do, and I know it's hard. Even at my old age, it's hard. So, but I think together we need to prepare your generation, and we need to kind of fix ours to talk about it. So, Yeah, I thank you for trying. Thank you. Andrew, I'm already impressed by what you're doing in high school because, like Selena said, in high school I was worried about not kissing a boy because I thought it was gross, and you're over here trying to change the world. So, what motivated you to advocate for suicide prevention among teens?
Well, I mean, first of all, one, I'm honored that you guys called me a college student earlier in the episode, but I am a junior in high school. But
I
um,
just went with it.
you would think you would get used to it. You would think that after so long of working with mental health and being surrounded by all of these stories and all of these different situations, you think that you would get used to it. You think that you would be like, oh, this happens. I know how to handle it. Every situation is new. It may end in the same result, but it is all so unbelievably different. And I think that in order to facilitate a conversation, it takes vulnerability. And something that is kind of like my mantra lately has been, we're all a little broken, but that's okay. And so I guess to put into perspective the things that I'm doing in high school, and believe it or not, I only started my mental health leadership journey in May of 2022. So this has only been a little over a year. I've fought for legislation within my Maryland. I live in Maryland, in the Maryland State House. I am the Maryland Association of Student Council's Mental Health Affairs coordinator, where I work on curriculums and resources and putting these out for Maryland students, over 900,000 of them across the state, as well as my internship with I Can Help, kind of implementing that conversation of mental health, because it is such an important conversation, especially when we put into perspective a digital lens, because we live in such a digital world, that digital for good comes when we are able to be mentally well. I also have a healing page on Instagram, and this is where I'm mostly able to facilitate the conversation. Being vulnerable comes with being so open that nothing is a secret anymore. And I know that sounds like such a nuanced and weird thing, and it is, but I'm a firm believer that when we only tell part of the story and we only tell a part of ourselves, we are unable to truly become gravitational, because people can skew things. But I put my story out there in December of 2022. I posted my why essay. It's kind of like my notorious essay. It's pinned on my main Instagram. And I talked about my story with suicide ideation and struggling with online bullying and perceptions, and kind of having this conversation and putting that out there led me to my advocacy, because I saw so many comments and so many people, and I got so many messages, including from the people that hurt me and were like, I wanted to end my life at this time when I was hurting you and I didn't even realize. And it puts into perspective that everyone is struggling. And there was a girl in my math class who I've gotten really close with, and she was telling me about her struggles, and I was like, I had no clue. And she's a very popular person, but she was like, I really don't have that many close people, and the people that are around me aren't good people. And it puts into perspective everyone's outer lens. You don't see what's inside of people. And so I like to be that ripple effect. And that is what motivates me to be an advocate for suicide ideation and suicide prevention, and putting my story out there. And to be quite honest with you, I think I have more photos and videos of me crying on the internet than I have smiling, because of my healing page being honest and open. So that kind of motivates me to be a big voice for mental health and suicide prevention.
I don't even know what to say right now. You guys are so amazing. Like, tell your parents they did an amazing job with the both of you, because I'm over here just taking it all in, and it's amazing what you're doing. So thank you for sharing that. That's huge for your generation and even for ours. And I hope whoever's watching, any adult, is taking this, what's going on right here, and bringing it, like soaking it in, because it's amazing what you're doing, both of you. And keep doing it, because you are going to change. You're going to change the world. So thank you for that. Okay, we're gonna play our next clip from Christy. So, please, Caitlin, do that.
When he started his freshman year, he loved high school. He loved high school. He loved having that freedom. He loved the classes that he was in. He liked the people in his class. He had a lot of friends, made a lot of new friends. He wasn't being picked on. He for anyone on the outside looking at his life, he had a great life. I mean, his dad and I loved him. He was the center of our universe. We did everything for him, around him. I mean, he was spoiled. We loved him so much. We love him so much. And he knew that. He knew how loved he was. That was not a question in our house, But yet, he felt so depressed. Chase and I were so close, and I didn't really discover the depth of his depression until he was gone. And we would talk about everything. We were close. As close as a mother and son could be. That's Chase and I. We spent every moment together. And I didn't know. A few months leading up to his death, I had caught him vaping, and we had talked about why. And he said that, he felt that he had seasonal depression. He said he thought that he might have BPD. He thought, he had these highs and lows. And he said, I usually feel better after a few days. But, he started vaping because he felt that it made him feel better. So we talked about, I made him stop, and we talked about punishment, and we talked about, like, what are we going to do, like, how are we going to help him? So we said, oh, well, I came up with, like, let's go to therapy, or for him to go to therapy, or for to volunteer, because I just thought maybe doing something good for the community would make him feel better. So he decided on therapy, because he said even though he didn't want to go, he felt he needed to go. So we were set on going to therapy, but we never made it.
So what I didn't do with the last one, the last video, is we didn't get a chance to talk about how we felt about it. So I kind of wanted to do that with this part before we get in our next question with Samantha. How did you? I don't even want to ask how did you feel, but what are your thoughts with the second clip or with the first clip?
With the second clip specifically, it hit like a really close to home, because I remember my freshman year of high school and feeling that same way that he did, of feeling like there's no way out of this. I didn't know what was going on in my mind. I was 14 years old, and how am I, like, the hormones and everything is just trying to develop, and also deal with the pressure of high school, and teenagers are mean. And I am grateful for my parents, and I was able to make it to therapy, unlike him. And that, just knowing there are so many kids out there who get to that point where they, like, finally tell their parents, like, I don't know what's happening in my brain, and it's just something's not working. And then their parents then become childless, because they're like, these resources are so basically unattainable for children at 14 to vocalize what's happening. And it hits really close to home.
Thank you for sharing that.
Um,
Andrew, did you want to share anything? You don't have to.
I think Sam was talking, so if Sam wants to go first, I can give my thoughts afterward.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. I have so many thoughts about this. And I guess I will speak from right now, I guess, the place of the professional, and some of the hopes and also frustrations I have with the field, and I know that we as a field are there's not enough of us. So Morgan, awesome. Keep on that journey because I think there's just not enough of us, and it's so sad and heartbreaking. I was speaking just to somebody recently that I know personally, who was telling me about someone they know who is struggling to find or even get an appointment, is actually out there looking, and the appointments are like 6 weeks or more out. And it's hard. It's hard and heartbreaking being in the field and sometimes still feeling like a little bit of I don't know what word it is, but like I wanna do more, and I also have to recognize that I have my own limits of what I can do. And I think things like this that advocate for having these conversations, not just as a therapist, but as a friend, as a parent, as anybody out in the community, and that the conversation can start before therapy if the struggle is to get out there. And I feel like there's probably more places for these resources, but it's about, doing the work that Andrew is doing already of helping the government understand the needs for more programs, more services, more support around people going into this field. And for those who are family members who have, I'll be honest, I heard you're going into psychology. Well, there's no point in that. What are you going to do with that? How are you going to manage all of these things? And, coming back to that question about stigma around talking about suicide, let alone, people feeling like this is a profession that is needed and wanted, and supporting people who want to take that journey and want to be there to, I'm going to say, hold space for others at a time when they need it the most.
No, God, I feel that so hard. I'll just share. I was at a breaking point last week, and even here on a military installation, it was a Thursday, and Thursdays are training days, so they don't have people that we need. So their answer was, "I'm sorry, your person isn't here. You're going to have to go to the emergency room." And to me, that wasn't the answer. Like I was already, I broke, and I was like, really? That was it? And for me, the emergency room is just not, I hate going because I'm there for hours and hours and hours. And it's almost like you have to make your situation worse than it is to even be taken seriously. And I was not in the headspace to do that. So I left. And it just made me even angrier, because if I wasn't that person who called my husband and told him that I didn't know what I was going to do, there could have been another person who was like, okay, that's it. So, we need, it needs to be fixed everywhere. Military installations, civilian installations, schools, everywhere. And I just get angry because yeah, I'm just glad I came home. But yeah, Andrew.
I'll probably get emotional talking about this one, but this specifically this clip really hit home for me, and especially something that he said in the first clip as well. But seeing his mom so upset makes me sad, because I love my mama. My mom is like my favorite person on earth. And when he said in the first clip, he said that she said that he would always go and give her a hug. And I always do that. I always go up. And then the other day, I was in Costco and my mom did it to me and she came over and she like wrapped her arms like she came up from behind me, like in the middle of Costco. And I just literally like almost started breaking down crying. But where it kind of gets really like difficult was that I also talked to my mom, but it was usually at my breaking points. And I remember so vividly, it's always in the car coming home from practice, and I break down sobbing. And I was like, I've been going through this for months. I've been doing this. I get called these things every day at school. I get called these, and then, and I don't like want to tell her. And a few years ago, my mom found a note that I had written that I threw away, that I didn't shred, and she found it and she didn't tell me for like 5 months. And we had the longest conversation and we were both just like sobbing, and it puts into perspective that like, holy crap, like I don't know how my mom would have reacted, and that breaks my heart. Like the fact that she had to even think about that for so many years, and the fact that my little sister, and I don't tell anyone this really, my little sister, I love that girl as well. My sister is also my built-in best friend. She wrote a note and she put it under my mom's pillow because she didn't know how to talk about it. Like she wasn't even 13 yet. And she was like already feeling that she had to carry the burden of her older brother. And she wrote that note. And the reason that I'm in therapy, I also have only told a few people this. I actually ended up cussing out my father. It was in my room at like 9 p.m. and my mom didn't know how to talk to me. I was breaking down sobbing. My mom didn't know what was going on. My mom was getting upset. So my dad came in and we had a conversation, and I was like, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to ever talk to you, blah, 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 just going off. And obviously there were very many words that were in the middle of that. And it just puts into perspective that like, holy crap, like if my family lost me and that was the reaction, I couldn't go. And hearing my sister as well telling me, she was like, I could not have lived with knowing that I could have helped you. And she was like, I could not have lived with the fact that you were gone. She was like, I literally would not be able to I wouldn't not be able to blame myself. I would blame myself if you died. And I just like sobbed for 3 hours after she told me that. And she only told me that like 2 months ago. And sorry, I didn't mean to talk about this for so long, but it's just, it puts into perspective like, holy crap, because I also was struggling a lot at around 14. And so hearing this makes the little boy in me kind of heartbreak, because I don't want to hurt my mama or my family. So that really, really hit home.
Thank you for sharing that. I know it's so hard. I just love your heart. You have that heart, and you don't want to see your parents suffer, but you don't want to suffer either. So I'm so proud of you for going to therapy, because that's hard. It's taken me years. I'm finally going to go, but that's a hard thing to do. Very hard. Samantha, what are some coping mechanisms for individuals facing anxiety and depression? And then as a parent, how do you look for ways to share this with your own child?
So coping mechanisms, always so hard for me to make blanket statements about because it's so individualized. But, there are some things that, more specifically help with almost like body regulation when you're feeling, however these like symptoms manifest. So if you have a lot of energy, being able to transfer that into something like going for a run, or even taking a walk around the block, around the room, if that's all you have, but knowing that your body has movement that it needs to resolve for you to feel safe again. is one thing I talk about. And I think that sometimes it's hitting at the physiological symptoms, like your heart rate is racing. And so taking deep breaths, and when you can't do that for yourself, this kind of answers to the second question. Having somebody there who's not telling you what to do, but doing it along with you. That's something called co-regulating, which is really important. So if I see, my son, or even I have a young niece who we see a lot, that will get upset, my first thing is I will sit with them. I will talk in, actually a lower voice. I will just breathe and sit with them in that moment, because if you are going through, especially anxiety or anger or any of those really big emotions that, the thinking part of your brain is actually going offline. And so if you are trying to connect with words, it doesn't always hit the mark. So if instead you try to help with that co-regulation of the physiological symptoms by being there, by mirroring what, would be helpful. So again, just starting to walk, slowly pace with someone, or even offering a cold drink of water because their body is getting heated, and that cold water might help them kind of reset. Or, there's even some people who you give them something cold to hold on to, just to allow, again, the body to settle. And once the body is regulated a little bit more, it allows that like meaning making and thinking part of the brain to kind of come back online, to then allow you to have those conversations. And the other thing I always say for people who, they're like, there's all these things, is honestly keeping a list of things that help you, so that you don't have to think about it. You can just look at it and you can figure out which one works for you right now, which one, like when you read it, you're like, yes, I'm going to do that because that's what I need right now. But really working and figuring out, making your own list of, healthy things that make you feel good. So whether that's calling a friend, taking a walk, taking a drink of water, taking a breath, it's going to be individualized. So just take the time to be curious about it for yourself, and, kind of go with that. See how it feels.
Thank you for that. I need to remember to do that. I have lists for everything else, to pack groceries when I go on a trip, but I don't have a list of things that help me when I'm in a situation. So thanks for that reminder. And we have another question for the both of you guys, from Morgan and Andrew. Let's start with, excuse me. Do you think that students are well informed about mental health resources available to them on campus or online? And then, based off that answer, how can that awareness be improved?
Specifically at UT, I feel as a psychology student, I don't know about other departments. We're all about mental health and the psych department. So I feel like awareness for our mental health resources are very abundant, and it's well known through our student government and everything of here's what you can do, here's who you can reach out to. Like, we pay a lot of tuition and a lot of that money goes to our mental health resources. So, but I don't think a lot of people use them as much as they should. I think it's like we're all aware it's there and no one wants to go to it or wants to reach out, and that is the hardest step, is reaching out and just getting that access first, because we do know it's there, and I do think there needs to be more conversations and just more help in getting people to do that initial step of reaching out. That is what I think, for me personally, and from what I've seen my peers need help with, is just the initial step of reaching out and obtaining the resources.
I'm glad you have that. I was a psychology major as well, but I
Mhm.
don't even remember that part, if there was even resources or anything. And I probably wouldn't have used it because I was so stubborn, or I'm still stubborn. I probably would have been like, I'm good, I don't need it. But I'm glad that it's being put out there. Now we just need to get people to use it, right?
Yeah, I think that is
Ah,
still an issue, that like hustler mindset of, oh, I don't need it, I can handle this by myself, and like pulling yourself up by the bootstraps when it's like it's okay to
yes.
have other people help you. And I think that conversation still needs to happen of it's okay to not be okay and need help.
You're right. Absolutely. Um, what about you, Andrew, at school? Do they talk about that? Are there
Um,
resources? Or I mean, what?
they work so at my school at least, and in my county and my state, I've noticed that they work to facilitate conversations about the resources and the things that are available, but they are very kind of forceful conversations. Like they are very disingenuous. There isn't necessarily a care. It's almost like a curriculum, like check mark. And it's very, and so when they talk about the resources, it's very much like, go to your guidance counselor. And then I'm like, they're helping me with my scheduling. Their jurisdiction isn't necessarily like to help me with my entire mental health crisis. And oftentimes the confidentiality of that is consistently gone. It's non-existent. And so many people don't use that as a resource. With that as well, not a lot of kids use the resources that are available to them. And like I said, with my work with the Maryland Association of Student Councils, a lot of my primary work is with resources. I manage and review resources from around the country. I've actually gotten students at like Harvard doing their research, like reaching out to us, being like, "Hey, can you review this resource that we want to help other students with?" And with that, I look at these resources, and there's so many, and they fall under mental health, they fall under addiction. Like it's literally everything: relationships, suicide ideation, relationships, peer pressure, cyberbullying, alcohol, drug, etc. And yet it's nowhere near to the potential in which it should be used. And a lot of the resources that are there, it's oftentimes very not stereotypical, but in a sense stereotypical resources, like, oh, just go to your guidance counselor, when it's really a lot easier said than done. And I think that we we underestimate that. Like it is so much easier said than done. And I noticed that as well with my work. I have to be so careful because I know the resources that I have. I know the coping mechanisms that I have. I know how to help myself because I've worked for years on my healing journey. Everyone is at different checkpoints. And so I have to watch myself as well. And I think it's a matter of being aware and being like, every resource is different for everyone. Everything is going to serve everyone differently. So when we give one solution, one objective solution for a million things, like why are you going to give? Like it's like giving a mental health resource for someone that's struggling with drug addiction. Like it's very like one size fits all. Like here's a resource, but it's not going to support everyone. So again, it's very objective. One resource, go to your guidance counselor. That's it, and it doesn't support youth at all.
Ah, that makes me sad to hear that. But they have you, and I know you're gonna make change. So just continue your work, and gosh, I hope things change. I really do. We're gonna play our last clip from Christy, and this is actually a little bit longer than the last two clips, but here we go.
The night before his death, we had a normal night. We had dinner. We talked about our trip to Japan, or going to Japan. We talked about his birthday that was coming up, and he seemed happy. And that night, he was playing his video games, and I just thought he was happy. He was good. Right before bed, I peeked in on him and I said, "You doing okay?" And he said, "Yep." And I said, love you. And he said, love you too. And the next morning, he was gone. And our lives just completely, our life, our purpose for life, our future, hope, it all went away. I try not to stay in the space of I should have, I could have, because I know it's not healthy for me to be in that space. So I've really held so close to my faith in Jesus. And I go to therapy once a week. We've gone to grief groups at the beginning, and I belong to a lot of Facebook groups. And it's really a difficult space to be in as a parent, to see your child's friends start school again, to go through holidays without your child. I don't know what it's going to be like, and I'm not looking forward to our first Christmas without him. But I pray, and I know that Jesus walks alongside of me, and he gives me comfort, and I get through each day. But if I could share anything to parents, is just to be vigilant, just to be a resource, talk about mental health, talk about depression, talk about anxiety, talk about it in your normal everyday life. Don't make it something that it's something to be ashamed of, because it's not. Your mental health is just as important as your physical health. I would say seek treatment fast. If you need to see, your primary if you need to see your primary care physician, because you can't see a therapist right away, because the wait time is sometimes months just to see a therapist. Have your child see their primary care physician. Talk to a pastor at church. But don't wait. Don't wait to seek help. And don't wait to talk about it. Make it an everyday topic. How are you doing? Everything good? Talk about your feelings. Talk about not just the happy things, but the things that are bothering your children. Don't be afraid about talking about suicide. I used to be so afraid. Don't be afraid to address it. I think you'll learn a lot by talking to your children about suicide, about the impact of suicide, about mental health, about getting help. I wanted to thank my friend Selena, who thought of me and who allowed me to share our story, and for Parents for Good as well. And offer my assistance if you have any questions, or if you like to learn more. I'm always happy to help. Thank you again.
Does anybody have anything they'd like to share about this last part of the video?
I don't mind sharing real quick. I don't know if she's on here, and she might be, but I would just like to say I love her faith. Because I've really been getting in tune with my faith as well. And on my healing page, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I'm gonna try and bring it up as best I can. On it, It says, "Your Jesus loving mental health buddy, your safe space and healing partner. I love you and I'm proud of you," in my bio. And seeing that clip reminded me of the video that I posted about. I post quite a bit of content, but I posted it 6 days ago. And it says, "Check on your happy friends because everyone's world can come crashing down. And everyone has their dark times." And it's a bunch of videos of me smiling with my friends. And then it's a bunch of videos of me breaking down, sobbing, losing my mind. And it just kind of got me thinking how beautiful faith is. And I don't know if any of you guys are Christian or are faithful, but faith has been such a beautiful part of my life. And I just want to say that I am praying for her. And she is such a beautiful human being with such a beautiful soul. And I promise that Jesus is protecting him and loving him. And Jesus loves her. And I just hope, I don't know if she's on here, but if she is, I just want to send so much love to her. And I appreciate her faith.
Thank you for that, Andrew. Anybody else want to share anything?
I just want to, Andrew, you said a lot of amazing things. And I also want to, again, send my gratitude to Christy for sharing her story and her words and her journey. And I think this probably goes into what we're going to talk about next, but I just appreciate all of what she's saying and what she's sharing and how important I agree that it is to normalize these conversations, bring in all sides of, your experience so that it's okay for everyone to feel like they can talk about anything.
I think they hit all of the points already, but once again, Christy, thank you. I know how hard it is. I can relate. I've had my 14-year-old cousin, she died by suicide recently, and I know how difficult it is to lose someone so young to such a big issue, and I think what you're doing is amazing, and I applaud you and want to give you the biggest hug ever. Just thoughts and prayers and air hugs.
Thank you for that. And I was going to just end this as well. Well, before we end it, was just to let Christy know as well how grateful we are for her and for sharing Chase's story. He will be forever remembered by all of us. And thank you for being a part of today's conversation. So we all want to hug you. We all want to cry with you. But we're praying for you. And we have a couple more questions. I think you kind of went into it, Samantha. How can family and friends create that supportive environment for those that are battling with mental health issues? Did you have anything else to add to that?
I think again, Christy said it perfectly, in that make these conversations part of the everyday. And I think also just be mindful as parents, as friends. We want to help our people feel better. And sometimes that comes with saying things like, "Oh, don't feel that way," or, "It's not that bad," because we are trying to help them feel better, but we also want to make sure that we're not invalidating what they're probably already struggling to talk to us about in the first place. So again, going back to that, just be curious. Be like, "Oh, tell me more. What's going on for you? Let's talk about it," and share your own experiences as, as a parent, as a family member, as a friend, so that they can feel that that they again are being held in that moment. And when we feel safe and we feel connected, then we are more likely to share what we need to share and say what we need to say. and feel like there's people and resources out there for us, and that we don't have to be in these spaces alone. A very quick thing I want to say that, as a parent, as a therapist, I don't always know if what move I'm making is the right one. I have to go with my gut and my sense. And I had a moment with my son just last week where he had, a situation at school, and, I think he was not sure whether or not he wanted to tell me as, a 7-year-old. And we got through it. And afterwards he had a moment. He said, "You know what, mommy? It feels really good to be honest." And that felt like both amazing, and in a moment I'm like, "Whew," like that hit really good. And I don't know if what I'm doing is always right, but I'm happy that I'm hoping that I can continue providing this space that he can be honest with the things that are hard. And I just want to encourage, you, when things that are tough that you maybe as a parent want to have your own reaction to, and try to stop a behavior or stop a thing, first remember that connecting is the most important piece. Because if you can maintain and keep that connection or repair those connections, then the people who are struggling will feel like they can come to you.
Thank you for that. It is hard though, right? I mean, I have a 20 and a 23-year-old, and it's like you're always crossing your fingers like, I really hope that got through to him. Or there's no handbook on this. We're just trying to make it. So it's so hard right now. Oh, we do have 2 more questions. So for Morgan, how do you think peers can better support each other in terms of mental health?
I think I mentioned this earlier, but I truly believe our number one way to support each other is just have more genuine, honest conversations. Like, strip away all the humor and gimmicks and just be real with each other about how we're feeling and what's going on, what we're struggling with. And then that will just lead us to be more open with everyone else. And eventually everyone will be comfortable talking about how we feel with each other. I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's just from my perspective and what I have seen. It helps to be more genuine with each other, and it creates open, honest conversations.
No, makes absolute sense. I'm praying that your generation will do that, to be open and stop hiding behind social media. It's really hard. Andrew, what message would you like to send to your people, to individuals that are facing mental health challenges?
I have a few. No, we're all a little broken. It does not need to make sense. And share your story. Sharing my story has been the saving grace. And every time that anyone has a conversation with me, I get to say, go look at my YSA, go look at my healing page. We get to grow together. Share your story, because everyone is a little broken. We all have a story to tell, and everyone is hiding in the shadows. So be the ripple effect. So be the reason that someone smiles today. That's actually my favorite shirt, by the way. Maybe I should send you guys the photo of me with my favorite shirt that says "Be the reason someone smiles today." But those are my mantras and the message that I'd like to send.
I love that. Thank you. I think we all need t-shirts like that. So send that over so we can get one made. I love it. Gosh, this has been a very emotional, impactful, inspirational, just so many things, this conversation today. So thank you guys all so much for sharing your deepest and darkest secrets and stories. And it's just so hard, but we need to continue to do that. Thank you, Samantha, for what you do and for sharing your stories. And it's just, I get very, it touches my whole soul. We do have a copy of free resources that we're going to share. We will share the link to that. Also, if you would like, yes, all the resources. Also, if you would like to know more about Chase, we will share that link as well. And we will share also the email to Christy if you want to send her any messages. And then Samantha also shared an article on how to talk about suicide. We'll share that as well. But please join us next month where we will be discussing bullying and its effects. And again, what an amazing conversation today. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you. I appreciate being able to be a part of this conversation.